Yes, plumbers, welcome back. Bigger footy. What round are we up to, boys? Is it round 6 or round 7?
7.
We're flying through round 7. We've got a full panel here. Really excited for the show. We've got Flanas over there. Flan, how you going?
Very good. Go the Reds.
JJ from the Den down in Geelong. How are you, Joshua?
Yeah, boys. I'm going well from the Bloods to the Reds. I like the subtle shift from you, Flanas, but all good down here.
And Joshua Robert Moffat on the producer deck. Moff, how are you, mate?
Very, very good. Happy to have the gang back together. It's been a while, so it's good to have us all in the same room, besides JJ, but yeah.
It is. No, there's plenty of love in the air, and we're all fizzed up. We're going to keep this really punchy. We've got a lot to talk about, so we're going to get straight into it. What was your moment of the round? Looking at you, Flan, to kick us off.
I'm going to go with Luke Parker's 300th. Great to see Sammy Reid in the rooms presenting the 300th jumper just before the game. Parks is 11th most all-time for contested possessions, 11th most all-time for tackles, 14th most all-time for clearances, 3-time Bob Skilton medalist for Swans Best and Fairest, 2-time Robert Rose AFL Most Courageous Player, All-Australian, 2012 Premiership Player, Swans captain. And North had a proper crack, tried to get him the win. Parks played a great game, 27 and a goal. Unfortunately, couldn't get over the line there. But, yeah, just an incredible player, ultimate competitor, great warrior for the Schwannies and North now. 300 of the very best. Well played, Lukey Parker, superstar.
On your Parks, there's a tinge of sadness, though, that it wasn't in a Sydney jumper.
I would have loved it to be in a Sydney jumper, but, yeah, we'll get to Sydney.
Yeah,
in a few moments.
We will. We'll touch on them. My moment of the round was the Dogs. I think just that win up against GWS. You know, no Jamara, no Darcy. A few people out of other than that, but the spirit they play with, Bont, they got their gun back. They play for Bevo. Things are starting to turn. The Kennel are now second favourite team again from 2016. So plenty of bark from the Dogs. So that was my moment of the round. JJ, what did you have?
I'll give some love in an era where the little men are dominating. Harry and Charlie at the MCG on Sunday took the game over, 33 disposals, 21 big marks and 6 goals between them. And in the end, probably the difference in the game. Jeremy Cameron tried to kick a bag up the other end, but Harry and Charlie did the job. Good to see them both back up and about, fellas.
Love a big key forward. Are they the best duo in the game when they're up and about? We can have a think about that. I know we want to talk about some forwards later. What about you, Moff?
Mine was just the Anzac Day round as a whole. I think we do it better than any other sports in the world with this kind of thing. And the round, just sit back and just commemorate and take a moment for what it all means. And, just love it. Bring sport and war together. It's, special.
Definitely. No, it is still the best game of the season, I would say.
It's the best day on the Australian calendar, Anzac Day. And as you said, Moff, AFL does a great job commemorating those who gave their lives in battle for Australia and New Zealand. And it was an absolute corker of a game, lived up to the billing.
Yeah. I cried 3 times listening to various Last Post songs during the day. It's definitely moving. It's got something, and as a player, if you're playing local footy or you're playing AFL footy, you want to play well in those games. Like, you can tell anyone who won one of those medals, the pride that it meant. But we'll get to a little bit more of that one later. JJ, Carlton Geelong, the big upset yesterday.
Huge.
What do you think of that one?
Yeah, well, it was definitely an upset, but I reckon the Cats, in a way, were right for the picking off the back of that Easter Monday into the short turnaround into another emotional blockbuster in front of a big crowd. So, yeah, they were right for the picking in a sense. I've already referenced Harry and Charlie, but Walsh is somewhere close to his best again, 30 touches. George Hewitt would have to be leading their best and fairest. And I maintain the decision that they've got to make around Tom De Koning is just probably the most interesting personnel decision of the season, because there's no doubt they are a different team. When he's dominating, when he's one of the best 5 or 6 on the ground, they are a different team. So it gives them life. It sort of revives their season. But in terms of De Koning and how close do you need to get to the 1.7 that's around, whatever it is, you just got to ask him, how close do we need to get to make it happen? Because Carlton look a different team when TDK is dominating, Flanas.
Certainly, and I feel like Harry Madden would have been very happy with that. All the 95 premiership players from Carlton had their 30-year premiership reunion on the weekend. I reckon it would have been pretty chuffed with what Tom de Koning was doing. And I thought there were a few similarities between the way the Blues played on the weekend and the way that 95 team played. Silvani playing fullback on danger, just like his old man did on Gary Ablett that day. Cripps, Hewitt and Walsh looked like Cooter, Diesel and Brett Ratton out there in the middle of the ground. Ollie and Elijah Hollands made a big difference. Both of them very polished forward to centre. They had 48 between them at 80% efficiency and 11 tackles. Bit of Craig Bradley and Fraser Brown about that. Sard was back to his best, had 21, and the crowd was doing the Ange Christou woof. Nick Haynes and Mitch McGovern, they were great off the half-back, doing the Michael Sexton and the Peter Dean. Chera had 25 of the best Scott Camperelli style possessions. Blake Acres was doing the Andy Mackay. Matty Cottrell was doing the Mill Hanna. Fogarty and Durden had a bit of Brad Pearce and Adrian Whitehead about them with their opportunistic work inside forward 50. And Harry and Charlie, as we touched on, were Sticks Kernahan and Earl Spalding. So it's a huge performance from the Blues. I reckon that 95 team would have loved it.
Who can one hand palm the ball like Cooter? Probably Charlie.
Cripper.
Cripper. You reckon he can do it?
Yeah.
Were you alive in 95, Moff?
Nah, I was not even close.
Yeah. So go back and have a look at that 95 Blues side. It was a great run. They were up and about, and that's when Lygon Street was pumping. But the Blues, we'd written them off. Now they've started to come good. You know, a couple of wins against some of the teams down the bottom. And now they finally get their best win of the season. What do we make of it? Are we back on, or
look? If they play like that, they're going to be a hard team to shake. Like, they took the lead in the first quarter, never looked back. Cats kicked 3 in a row at the start of the last to make a bit of a game of it, but Blues steadied again, even when the Cats came at them. And I feel like it's just a real character building win for that group, and it could be a bit of a fire starter if they can replicate that in the coming weeks. Massive game next week at Adelaide Oval against the Crows. They're coming off 3 losses in a row, so that's a blockbuster. That
What they did is they went to work on the Cats. They said, we're not going to let them mark the footy. Geelong at the MCG, when they can take over 100 marks, are close enough to unbeatable, only 69 marks for the Cats. They did the job in terms of slowing one of the two Slash brothers. So Smith had 29, 9 tackles and a goal. He was still really impactful. But Holmes was the one that they kept in check, only 20 touches for Max Holmes. So you've got to go after one of those two guys when you're playing against the Cats. So let's give some credit to Michael Voss and that coaching group. The players have got to execute it, but there's been a lot of people around suggesting that, Voss is tactically not that astute, but I thought tactically that was a really good game plan and one that was executed beautifully from his players.
best spine in the comp, the Blues, and it was good to see them get back on track. Flanners, what about your boys, the Schwannies, moving on to the Gold Coast Sydney game? What did you think?
It's just it's well below the standard, unfortunately. 5 goals up, dominant first quarter, and then to concede 12 in a row and fall away like that was just, incredibly disappointing. It's not something that I've seen a quarter like that from the Swans for a very, very long time. And I know I keep banging this drum, and you don't want to make excuses, but it's not just one player that's missing. Amadi, McDonald, Goulden, Papley, Wicks, Adams, Fox, Cunningham, the captain Callum Mills, Ben Patton's the latest one. He got injured on the weekend, and then to add to that, McLean barely had a pre-season, had a groin injury, had him sidelined until after round one. Grundy had a knee issue, it interrupted pre-season. Melikins had an interrupted start to the year, just come back from a few weeks off. So the personnel issues are significant, but
play the violin music, please, Moff, over the top of this.
But that being said, it's one of the worst quarters of footy I've ever seen.
Yeah. Is it all too much then? Is that what you're telling me? Is it all too much for the Swans in 2025? Because you get to 2 and 5 now. It's the best. The first quarter was the best quarter I've seen them play all year. Maybe alongside what they did to North Melbourne in the second half a month or so ago. But like Isaac Heaney was, and before the game, I was thinking to myself, where do you want him to play? He's so needed around the footy, but he's so needed. He looks easily their most likely avenue to a score. So when he goes ahead of the ball, he almost impacts straight away. And in the first quarter, he looked like Superman. I mentioned that to you, how good he looked. But after quarter time, what was it, 15 goals to 6, I think. So completely one-way traffic, 67-point turnaround. We'll get to the Suns because they deserve a fair bit of love, because at quarter time I'm thinking, okay, I've been sticking up for the Suns. What am I going to say here? Because this is a pretty poor performance from them, because they were, as we'll remember, they were having to back up after losing to Richmond. So they were the ones who needed to have this thing in the tail. But I've gone down this path before, and I'll go down it again. I mentioned it early in the game to you boys, even when things were going well. I just can't get my head around the selection situation at Sydney. I just can't understand why they're seemingly wanting to fly in the face of what everyone else in the competition is doing. I can't see a world, Flanners, where you need to pick Grundy and Laddams in the same team. I just can't understand it.
The issue is, who else do you pick? I mean, you look at that reserves team that played on the weekend for the Swans against Gold Coast in the curtain raiser, and it's absolutely bare bones. So
I think you go small, though. You don't need to be. My thing is not. I think Laddams can play AFL, but as a ruckman only, he's not. I don't see him able to impact the game enough as a forward, and I just see the Swans as being too tall. McLean is genuine. We know McLean can play forward ruck. Now they're going to say to us, well, we want to leave McLean inside forward 50. Want him to be a forward 100% of the game. But if it's good enough for guys like Thilthorpe and Peter Wright and others to come up and play 5 minutes or 4 minutes a quarter in the ruck, because that's all Grundy needs as a chop out, then it should be good enough for McLean to do it. So I get it. I know Dean Cox played in a really successful team that had 2 ruckmen in it as well as key forwards, but I mean, I just don't understand why they are so eager to go down the path of being so tall when everyone else is either playing 2 key forwards and one of those 2 key forwards goes into the ruck, or some teams are just playing 1 key forward. So they are flying in the face of modern convention to some extent.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. I mean, whichever way they end up going with selection, as I said, they're pretty hamstrung with who's available at the moment. But I would say to the guys that were out there on the weekend, barring a couple who played pretty well, I like Jake Lloyd's game, I like Matty Roberts' game, but you can't leave it to Heaney, Warner and Rowbottom to do all the heavy lifting and expect them to dominate for 4 quarters. Like they were great in that first quarter, those 3. They set up a 6-goal to 2 start for us, started like a bull out of the gate. And then in the second quarter, when the Suns matched it, some of the other guys who were out there for us, senior players, just needed to come to the party and get more involved yesterday and support our big 3 when the Suns turned up the heat. And I just felt like they'd, particularly in that third quarter, I mean, the second quarter, they matched our level. And then in the third quarter, we just didn't have a single player that everyone lowered their colours. I thought Caden Cleary was probably the only bloke on the ground who was better than his normal output across the 4 quarters. So,
yeah.
Disappointing.
So, big game next week, Flan. You've got the Battle of the Bridge.
Yeah.
And then also on Sunday, we've got the Q clash between Brisbane and Gold Coast. But if Dean Cox put a call into you this week and said, look, the boys need a bit of a lift, need a bit of a rev up, and you're going in there pre-game to give that final address to your beloved Schwannies, what are you saying to them against the big arch nemesis?
You're going to have to hang tough and give it a crack for 4 quarters. What I said last week, 1.5, 2 quarters isn't going to get it done with the blokes that we're missing. The team we've got out there, like, every game's really important. You have to find a way to bank wins. And I know our guys aren't there, but we've got to hang tough in there until those guys get back. 1.5 quarters, not going to get it done. You're going to get blown out of the water and they're going to kick 12 goals on you in a row. But I believe when our missing players do come back, we make a huge run at it this year, but you have to bank a few wins here. You have to find a way to hang tough. And, GWS aren't in great form at the moment either. Go out there and throw everything at it for 4 quarters and knock them off, boys. Come on, go to Schwannies.
It would be a famous win if you can do it, because they're off, and we'll move. That is well said, mate. Well said. Coxie, if you're listening, give our great man a call, because I think the boys need it.
I'll come up there. Fly me up.
But the Giants, they were talked up as the flag favourites, one of the flag favourites at the start of the year. Sort of hit a bit of a few bumps in the road, bit of a rocky patch, and they've got the Schwannies next week, who, will be really keen to obviously knock them off. What do we make of the midfield of the Giants at the moment? And JJ, where are you seeing some of the issues that they need to fix?
I'm not alarmed about the Giants just yet. I just think if you look across most teams, and credit to the teams who have been able to fly in the face of what I'm about to say, but when your best players don't play well or don't play really, really well, you struggle. Jesse Hogan was kept relatively quiet, kicked a couple, but was kept quiet. His impact was not massive, and Toby Green as well. His numbers look okay, 15 and 2 goals too, but if you watch the game, he missed some really gettable opportunities. He made some strange decisions in the game. He's normally a really sound decision maker, particularly with ball in hand, but one of the goals he missed was really strange. He tried to sort of lob it at the goals and it drifted into the post versus just punching it along the ground. So I just think when your better players, particularly two of your best 5 players, don't play well, you leave yourself vulnerable, and that's exactly what happened. From the Dogs' perspective, it was a sensational performance, incredibly similar in terms of the third quarter to the Gold Coast and Sydney game. The Swans didn't kick a goal in the third quarter, neither did the Giants, whilst the Dogs were able to kick 5 goals, 3. And importantly, in footy, boys, as you know, like when you get your momentum, when you get your 20 minutes of momentum, the difference between winning and losing is so often, okay, when you had your 20 minutes, did you kick 5 goals 1, or did you kick 2 goals 3 and not give yourself the chance to separate the game? And to the Dogs' credit, they had their quarter, they had their period of the game, and they took full advantage, as did Gold Coast.
Huge win for the Dogs. I was tempted to tip them last week, and you blokes, Moff and JJ, you convinced me not to because Giants are good up in Canberra. But, gee, the Doggies were dominant, weren't they? And they're a team that I'm loving what they're doing at the moment. Of 40 up against Brisbane at Norwood before they got overrun. Nearly beat the Pies, only lost by a kick. And it's that underbelly that they've got coming through. It's not the big names that are. I mean, they're doing a great bulk of work as well. But Smoke and Joel Frazier in the midfield, he's had another 27, 19 contested on Saturday. One of the most improved players in the comp. He's only 19, gun midfielder. Dr. Sam Davidson, mature age recruit, he's had 15 and 1. Riley Sanders backed up his big game from last week, had another 20. Matt Kennedy, we've spoken about him a few times, 26 and 2 again. Joe Hannison's back, he's had 15 and 1. And Riley West bobbed up, he's kicked another 3 as a small forward. Harms has had 22 and 4 goals. Rory Lobb swung forward, kicked a couple in the absence of Sam Darcy. So it's not just Bont and Libber and Tim English and Bailey Dale and Ed Richards and Norton, who are all awesome as well, but they're getting a massive impact from that next group of guys coming through. And they've still got Cody Waitman, Treloar, Liam Jones, Sam Darcy, Jamara, all potentially coming back at some stage. So they're real dangerous.
I think they could have the best clubhymans in one team. I just feel like they've got all these blokes that play with heart, do the little things, defensively, run 2 ways. I really like Riley West. I think he's a player that always seems to just give a lot of effort. And I think keep bringing effort each week. It's a very even comp at the moment. They're the little margins and little percentages that you can make up when you're all locked in as a team together.
We'll find a lot more about them in the next month. They got Port, Gold Coast and Geelong coming up in the next few weeks. So big games for them, but we'll see where the Dogs are at by the bye round.
Yep. Anything you want to mention on that game, JJ, before we move across to Port and North?
Let's give a bit of love to the coach as well, Luke Beveridge.
Yep.
He hasn't been one of my guys per se. I've never really taken to him, but you've got to give him some credit. He made the big call with Liam Jones, left him out of the team, omitted him from the team. I thought he'd been going well enough to keep his spot. Was really keen to get the young kid, Jed Buslinger, into the team, and he was pretty good on the night. So he's never been afraid, and maybe he's gone a bit too far on different occasions with a McRae or a Caleb Daniel or a few others. Now, he might want to dispute that, but he's never been afraid to make a big call at selection or put Bailey Dale as a sub and try and put a rocket up him. So got to give him some credit. He's been more than willing to throw the magnets around, and he's had to because of the injuries. And look, I said this about the Dogs, 4 or 6 weeks ago. I've seen it happen with Brisbane and with Geelong in their premiership years. Now, I'm not saying the Dogs can win the premiership just yet, But when you lose some of your stars or some of your veterans drop out of your team and retire, if you have guys like Fraser and West and these youngsters jump up and improve, and Davidson, then all of a sudden when your stars come back, you might be a 3 or 4 goal better team when you thought you'd be worse off because of the players that had left.
I feel like Moff would be very in touch with like a spiritual coach like Bevo, but I can imagine Bevo trying to get that out of JJ, and him, it just going in one ear, out the other. I don't know. JJ wouldn't stop to even pat a nice puppy on the street. What do you reckon, Moff?
Well, it only works. It can't work every week. I mean, if you're naive enough to buy into stories and themes every single week, then maybe your maturation levels need a little bit of work. But credit to Luke Bevo. Him and his big teeth are getting the job done.
And on coaches, I mean, what did we think of Jason Horne-Francis walking away, turning his back on Ken? That was very animated. Interesting to watch that.
Yeah, I didn't like that. You can't be doing that.
No,
walking away from the coach.
Yeah, he's a hothead, isn't he? Like, he gets really riled up.
Yeah,
he's getting away with it though. He's getting away with it because he's an absolute superstar player. Like, that's why he's getting away with it. We're finding reasons now. Put Kane Corns' opinion on the matter to the side, because he that is his one blind spot when he talks about sport, talks about footy. But he gets away with it, or I think it's the same as when you play poorly. If the team loses, you're in the gun. But if the team wins, you almost sort of get swept under the carpet. So he's having these moments more often than not. But his performance, I should say, is unbelievable. Harley Reid is having similar outbursts and making similar mistakes, but his personal form is not up to scratch, and his team is going poorly. So you can see how Horne-Francis gets away with it because he's dominating games. I thought he was probably the second or third best player on the ground in that game, versus Harley Reid, who's potentially playing less than we're expecting from him, and his team's getting beaten.
Horn is a great player to watch. Geez, he's dynamic and powerful. He's the next danger that we get to look forward to for the next decade once Danger finishes up.
Without him, I think North would have won, because Port were capitulating a bit there in that last quarter, and Horn sort of held them together.
Yeah,
and his contests were critical in them getting away with that win. I thought North were a lot better.
Yeah,
after quarter time, they kicked 11 goals to 7. But that first quarter, they let the Port get the big 5-goal jump. But I thought North were pretty good.
Yeah.
Paulie Curtis can't be serving 3 games off the back of that tackle either. Now, by the time you listen to this, maybe they've appealed and maybe he's got off. But in terms of where we sit right here, right now, Monday morning, he's got 3 weeks for that tackle. I understand the rules. So you can throw the rules at me and say, well, it's either 3 or it's 0. I get it. But a player cannot be serving 3 game suspension for a tackle like that. There's no... So the 2 major, I guess, signs for the MRO is, were the arms pinned and was there force placed on the player going into the ground? Yes, the arms are pinned, but they have to be pinned. I mean, there's no other way to complete that tackle without wrapping the player up in a bear hug. And then there's no force from Curtis. There's purely momentum. I mean, he can't pull him and stop his momentum and drag him to the ground, nor does he have really, in my opinion, the ability to sort of fall to the side. That is all about momentum. So I'll be disappointed for him. He's having a great season. I'll be disappointed for him and for the game if he have to serve three weeks for that.
Yeah, it's a football act. Like, I don't want to see anyone getting reported for that. I think we might need to put a call into Chriso and see if he can come on bigger footy.
It's an unfortunate quirk of the game, isn't it? Yeah, sometimes you just cop 3 weeks because the bloke gets knocked out. It's just bad luck. But that's the way the game is at the moment.
Yeah, they're going to have to extend the squad depth, because everyone's just getting reported this year. Like, I don't know. Like, maybe it's getting corrected. I'd love to see the amount of suspension games missed. Has anyone seen that? Has that gone up, Josh?
Not sure. I can do some homework for you.
Was there a player you played with, JJ, that was like Horne-Francis? That was just, bit of a nutcase. Hothead. Yeah. Who's a hothead you played with, and how did you deal with them?
No one really to that extent where you needed to, really spend time talking to them in between breaks. Like in the heat of the moment, the Crouch brothers would fly off the handle. Tommy Lynch would fly off the handle. But that's in the moment. You see that all the time. You'll see a player streaming past another. He doesn't give the hands, and you'll see the player turn back and just give an absolute spray for 2 or 3 seconds. But once you get to the next contest, or once you get to quarter time, it's as if that never happened, because it's just a heat of the moment situation. But clearly with Horne-Francis, I would think he's coming to the bench for his rest, and he's quite frustrated and wound up in those moments as well. That was, to be honest, that was one of my main roles on the bench when I was working at the Cats. Was, you know, the players, you understand them. So, you know, a guy like a Cam Guthrie who can come to the bench really frustrated, or Tom Hawkins can come to the bench often really, really grumpy and frustrated. Go and sit with those guys. Go and spend time with them. Go and explain to them that things are actually going well, even though it might not feel like it. And then understand, you know, guys like Danger and Jeremy Cameron, you just let them go because nothing phases them. So maybe someone, and I've seen Ken do it at different stages, maybe someone on that Port Adelaide bench needs to be assigned to Horne-Francis when he comes from the ground.
Hugo Garcia, 16-gamer, subbed out before halftime. What are our thoughts on that, attacking the 16-gamer as opposed to maybe one of the senior players?
Yeah, shit ass.
Yeah, well, it brought back some memories. Being on a St Kilda list, coached by Ross, he always had a player or two that were kind of in his crosshairs for a period of time. And it kind of felt like at times that it was, geez, he's picking on him again, or, you know.
Were they always kids and younger players? Were they ever stars?
Yeah, no, so Tom Lynch, who you just mentioned before, who went over to Adelaide, he was drafted by St Kilda, and probably fair. Some of that is fair, but Lynchy probably would have felt like Ross was always into him. And that's because he probably knew he could play, and he was had a few things that his attention to the details, as JJ Redick would say, were a bit poor. But then also Ross loved going at Steve Silvani. The one part about Ross that I did like and was refreshing, I'd never sort of quite heard it before, he'd go at the coaches. So when you're doing the game review, he'd turn around and he'd just blast a coach. So Lee Tudor and Sauce, they would cop it from him, and just put it on them as well as the players. So, but you're right, it's probably not the best look.
Lachie Neale, he's had another 31 disposals, 5 clearances, 12 score involvements, 3 goals. We're watching one of the all-time greats here, boys. Even with all the accolades he's got, it probably doesn't get spoken about in the calibre that he should, but he just keeps churning out big performances year after year after year. And if you don't lock down on him, like Windhager should he have gone to? I know McCluggage has been in great form at the start of this year, but once they identified Neale was having a blinder, do you make the move, shift Windhager over?
Yeah. One, after meeting Lockie before, and listening to him talk and keeping a close eye, I think mentally he would be as strong as any player in the comp, and he's got so much confidence and self-belief. I think, he's just a real competitor, and he loves the responsibility of being the best player in that team, wants to go out there, wants the big moment. He's kind of that, it reminds me of like a junior football that was always a gun, and, got to the level where you sort of get addicted to that feeling of being in the best or winning league BNFs. He's kind of got that about him. So, I agree with you, Flan. It's a good take. Lachie Neale's had an amazing career and, continues to do so.
And they've become deeper with the Ashcroft boys. So even in the past sort of 12 months, so if you look back to, round 7 last year, neither Ashcroft was in the team. Now both are in the team. Will had 35 touches. Levi had 23. Could have kicked a goal. Was a little bit wasteful in front of goal. So they've added basically 2 gun midfielders to that group as well. They already had Berry, who I love. I think he'll be a clubby man at some stage this season.
Yeah.
McCluggage, I think's been all Australian to this point. That's why they went and sat on him with Windhager. So the midfield is so deep now with Josh Dunkley that Neale looks like he's playing a really aggressive striking role. So he's attending stoppage, but he's staying forward. He's staying ahead of the footy like Petrarca does, like De Goey does at his best, like Dustin Martin has done did do for 5 or 6 years. So he's staying ahead of the footy because Neale has, and give him great credit, for a long time Neale was probably for every one kick, he'd have 1 to 1.5 handballs. He was really keen to handball the footy. And I've heard him mention that he's identified in his game, I need to be a better kicker and I need to kick the ball more. And if he can continue to add this level of goal scoring to his game, because now they've got a deep midfield, he's going to be pretty much impossible to tag because of the patterns he runs ahead of the game.
Yep. Quick one of the Saints shit.
It's about where they're at.
I didn't expect them to make the finals.
It's an intriguing month coming up. They got Freo at Marvel, Carlton, West Coast away, Suns at Marvel, D's in Alice Springs, and then the bye. They've got to get some wins out of that group of games because after that they've got Dogs, Pies, Hawks, Freo in Perth.
Okay. You mentioned now I know we're going to continue to move along here. We've been going 32 minutes, says my clock. Who the hell decided Essendon and North Melbourne Thursday night into St Kilda Fremantle Friday night? That's a good idea. Whose idea was that?
Wow, it's perfect for the 200-plus cup on Thursday night, Josh. But unfortunately, Drapes...
one of the 200-plus participants won't be out there.
No, not ideal. But, I wouldn't exactly call it a blockbuster, but, the marshmallow game of yesteryear, Essendon North. And they both need a win, so they'll be giving their all for us on Thursday night footy.
Fremantle Adelaide, Fogarty out injured with the shoulder. Now Thilthorpe out with the dislocated finger. Such a great start to the year for the Crows, but now if those guys can't get back quickly, we've seen what happened with the Swans, no continuity with the Talls in the forward half. It's not alarm bells, but it's going to be interesting to see how the Crows cover that in the next couple of weeks.
Well, my spies tell me Thilthorpe should be okay. Should be able to. He's got a hairline fracture where he dislocated that finger. So we were beginning to think it was a compound fracture or something significant like that. But it seems like he's just got the hairline fracture. And look, he probably doesn't touch the footy Monday to Friday and jabs it up and plays. That's not great preparation. But he returned to the game after injuring that finger and took a couple of unbelievable marks. So he's got great mental toughness to... Because the last thing you want to do when your finger is terribly sore is grab a footy. So, I think he's going to be okay, and they need him because Tex looks like he needs a rest. Fogarty's potentially back. That's the other little bit of mail. He's either back this week or definitely next. So it might be Fogarty and Thilthorpe this week, and Tex actually has a rest because he does look like he needs a rest, the big fella.
That Freo, I think the real Freo is finally standing up. We need to take notice. But the Crows, the way they came back in that last quarter was really impressive. They just took the game on. They generated a lot of scoring attempts. I'm feeling good if I'm an Adelaide fan going into next week, although it's against Carlton, who have also got their mojo. I think just the belief you get in the game review of watching that last quarter, you go back and watch that last quarter, the Crows are in complete control of that and looked really scary. So
you are barracking. You're barracking for the narrative because you picked Fremantle to win the flag. We got to wait. We got to wait and see how they play against St Kilda under the roof at Marvel Stadium. Now, whatever the game looks like, whatever Ross and the Saints try and make this game look like, this could be a really grim watch. This could be 65 versus 62, but Fremantle have to be the 65. You can't go home off the back of a terrible performance against Melbourne in Melbourne. You can't then go home and play really, really well on a big occasion for Anzac evening and then come to Melbourne and not win the game. They should beat St Kilda. They better beat St Kilda. Will they beat St Kilda?
Their bottom half's still a concern for me. Even though they won, they still had 12 blokes who had 11 disposals or less. They're so heavily reliant on that top 7 players to all have a big game at the same time. And it happened on the weekend. Brayshaw, Sarong, Hayden Young, Jordan Clark, Shai Bolton, all in top form. That run and link up with handball through the corridor and the deep entries to Tracy and Amos in the one-on-ones is very impressive. Put the Crows back 6 under the pump and they were able to open up that big lead in the first quarter. But we've seen in other games this year, if one or two of those guys are well held or just a little bit off their best footy, that bottom half, that underbelly of their 22, they just need to be better if they're going to win big games. So it's a big watch on that bottom half of their 22 against the Saints.
Yeah. There's one more game we wanted to talk about before we get into best clubbyman areas, and it was the big one, the Anzac Day clash, Collingwood versus the Bombers. And we have a special audio note from a huge plumber, a big fan of bigger footy, the Hamrat. Hamish Painter, Moff. I believe you're going to play some audio. He's a big Bombers man, and we wanted to check in with how he saw the game.
Yes, Plumbers, Patto, Moff, Flanas, and Jerker Jenkins if you're in there. My take on the Bombers this week, with plenty to be happy about, I guess. Still a bit of shoots there. I've got a bit of a theory. I don't know, you could knock me down for this, but with our ruck issues, do we chuck Nate Caddy in there for a bit of a pinch hit? I just love his energy. He's a live wire. He has a crack. I'd love to see him rip a game apart around the ball more often.
Well, there we have it. The Hamrat. Now, Flanners, you know the Hamrat. He's a star local footballer.
A superstar for McLeod Kangaroos, former captain, premiership player at McLeod. Superstar, Hammer time.
Yeah, so thanks, Hammer time. What do we think of his takes? Nate Caddy into the ruck for the Bombers.
Too small. He's not big enough. He's about 193. He's just nowhere. He would get. It would be problematic for his long-term prospects as a key forward because he's just way too small. I would put Ben Mackay in the ruck, to be honest. He's the one I would put in there. He's got the size. I threw it up last week and the query was, is he competitive enough? Well, let's find out. Let's put him in there and find out because he's not intercept marking like they need him to. I don't care about the salary. Just don't even bring that up. In terms of where he might be best fit, it might be a great release the shackles moment to say to Ben Mackay, guess what? This week, we're going to play you in the ruck. Who do the Bombers play this week? They've got North Melbourne on Thursday night against your old team. You're not going to play against Nick Larkey, your old mate. You're going to go into the ruck and you're going to do your absolute best against Tristan Cherry because guess what? If Tristan Cherry gets the better of Todd Goldstein, that could be the difference in the game.
I love that, JJ. Love that.
Cherry will, to steal a line from a word from Andrew Gaze, Cherry would eviscerate Nate Caddy in the ruck.
He'd just get bashed
It'd
up.
be handy around the ground, but you'd be obviously worried about him in a huge centre bounce hit. But
smash up your best young tall forward. I don't know about that.
He is a competitor though. I'd take that. Hamrat that probably does know young Nate. So interesting comment. What about the Pies? What do we like about them? What makes them tick at the moment? Why are they the flag favourites?
Well, again, it was those four blokes. Side bottom, Pendlebury, Dacos brothers. They had 115 last week against Brisbane on Friday. They had another 133 between them. And Darcy Cameron stepped up again. Ned Long stepped up again. The midfield and that surge footy that they're playing, where the experienced mids are just controlling the contest, prepared to absorb pressure, work through it with that calmness and composure. Pendlebury and side bottom do it beautifully. And then if they don't have the ball, they instantly switch back to applying that heavy pressure to the oppo mids. And then when they win the ball back, they flick back into their offense and they link up with handball and get it in quick to their forwards. There was a goal that Tim Membry kicked when he got the ball coming in low and fast. He juked it off the deck and hooked it around on his left. And at the Saints, he never had that sort of entry because they're always just chipping around and then the numbers flood back and you'd always have to be marking against 4 or 5 blokes. But yeah, at the Pies, those low chaos balls entering the 50 to the forwards in the one-on-ones, it's an exciting way that they're moving the ball. And as a forward, you love some of the looks that you're getting from the mids.
Yeah. I think the Pies have a lot of high IQ players. I was going to mention, JJ.
No doubt.
Smart users, and they understand the game plan. Is the other point that I thought of.
They're also back to being unbelievably sound defensively. Even without Darcy Moore, it didn't matter too much. But they're back to being the air assist king. So you think about like Billy Frampton's in that team to lock down a big forward so that Moore and Quaynor and Maynard and Howe can come over the top, third man in. And that's going to be the way teams will try to beat Collingwood. And if teams do beat Collingwood, I reckon you'll see either that in-between ball movement, which is getting some of those Collingwood defenders out of position, or you'll see quick enough ball movement so you can bang it inside 50. And you'll see the great sign, the great telltale sign will be a Darcy Moore or a Maynard or a Howe just not quite getting there in time as the third man up. So it's getting to that one-on-one quickly. The key forward is able to take advantage of Frampton 1v1, and the third man in is just not quite getting there. So I'm looking forward to seeing what type of adjustment opposition teams try and make against Collingwood because yes, those guys around the footy are dominating, but behind the ball they've been unbelievably good too.
Is there any way to stop Nick Dacos at the moment?
Yes, but it's not going to be easy because he just feels like he's in the zone. When you go to the footy, you should watch him really closely. He almost pays attention to his tagger in terms of how they're physically feeling, and when he senses that there's a little bit of weakness in them, or they're under a bit of duress physically, he finds a way to go again and really take you to the edge of your comfort zone. He runs really hard for long periods of the game, and then he is able to walk because he's being tagged. He can choose the moments where he wants to walk and recover and look after himself. So he's physically testing his taggers, and when he's not tagged, well, it's a free for all, and he takes over the game.
Will Nick have a good game next week?
He'll have a great game. We got Geelong next weekend at the G, so yeah, Tommy Atkins has his hands full if they want to do that. But I reckon they'll probably chuck Holmes to him.
Yeah,
they've done that before. Try and nullify it.
Atkins has had a crack at it as well. He's good. He's a good matchup size wise.
Bit one pace.
I don't think Max can't concentrate enough to tag. I don't reckon. And Chris is reluctant to tag as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if they just test their luck early in the game and see how things go, which sounds foolish, but this is what clubs do. The teams who don't want to tag just are so reluctant to tag.
Well, I think the jury on the pies at the start of the year was the ageing list, but the older boys are standing up. You know, their run is unbelievable, defensively, offensively, open up lanes for each other. I'm starting to believe it could be a Collingwood sort of bounce back grand final year. You know, they need that dip, but all the ingredients are there. So you still got to have a. I think once they get to a point though, Moff. Once they get to a point of, so what have they got at the moment? They've played 7, so they've got 6 wins in the bank. Once you get to probably 12 wins, I think that's the point where you start to say, okay, what does maintenance look like? How do we sub Steele out of a game? How do we start Pendles as a sub like they have already? How do we take Crisp out of a game, or do we give Howe a week off? I think you have to give these guys 1 or 2 breaks before the pre-finals bye, because that's too far down the track, so that these 33-plus-year-olds are still playing like they are now in September.
Definitely. And we still got troops to come back. We got Moore, we got Schultz. So there's rotations going to have to happen. So, yeah, I'm with you. But at the same time, when Sidey and Pendles are having 30 each on Anzac Day and in the form of their life, you keep playing them until you have to take him off.
We've got 2 pies in the Best Clubbyman nominations this week, so plenty of Collingwood love in the air. Flan, you want to kick us off? Who's your nomination for Best Clubbyman?
My nom for Best Clubbyman is Jack Crisp, who breaks Jimmy Steins' record this weekend, 244 consecutive games, and that is legendary status. You talk about players that you remember in 50 years' time, and that's one of those stats that just puts you in that top echelon of players. And he's been an awesome player, no fuss, cool head, hard nut, two-way runner, can play anywhere, super player for a very long time, super consistent, and 245 games in a row. That's a very special achievement. It's going to be held in high regard for the test of time.
It's unbelievable he hasn't got suspended with all the new rules and, on that Crisso's enforcing.
Very smart player.
Great call out there, Jack Crisp, but I definitely see him as a clubbyman. Moff, you've gone with a Collingwood veteran.
Yeah, I've gone with Sidey. I mean, he's 34. He's basically part of the 4 walls at the club. Got to get the stats right, but I'm pretty sure he had a career high in clearances and contested possessions on the weekend on Anzac Day. So the boys obviously love playing with him.
I had him for the medal.
Had him for the medal?
Yes, Flan. Well done.
That's a good tip.
But yeah, he just seems like an absolute ripping bloke, and you'd love to play with him.
Yeah, the reaction when he got the medal from the team was fantastic. Yeah, so great nomination, Moff.
Jamie a bit stiff to not get the medal. Just
yes, but the clearances.
Sidey. I was happy with Sidey. I had him on my feed. So,
JJ.
Hard to know what you've got to do as a small forward when you've had 19 and kicked 5 to be to be best on ground. I'm going to give some love to a man who wanted to leave the club when he was a forward, went back, turned himself into a genuinely great intercepting defender. Injuries have happened. Now he's had to go back forward. He hasn't dropped the lip. He's dyed the hair a few times, and now he's shaven the head. Rory Lobb, the big lobster, kicked a couple. Didn't have a big impact in the game, but I watched that game closely. He was really competitive aerially. Clearly had been told you can't let Taylor and Buckley dictate the game aerially behind the ball. So kicked a couple, competed hard against one of his old teams. So Rory Lobb is my nominee for the week. I don't expect him to win the vote, but he deserves a bit of love.
It's a different one. Yeah, the lobster.
No, I like it.
You made some good points, though. Yeah.
No, he's evolved. The way he's evolved as a player, I think we're seeing the best version of him now. And he's a smart, he's an adaptable player now. You can put him anywhere. He'll pinch hit in the ruck for you. He'll go forward. He'll play back. He's reliable wherever he goes. And probably in the early parts of his career, you wouldn't say that, but he's worked really hard to become a super player wherever he plays.
Yeah. I had Zach Butters. Now, I know people, the thought might be, well, these are, clubbymen, sort of, the heart and soul types, and not necessarily the stars of the competition or your best player at your club. But the criteria is around, bloke you want to have a beer with, bloke that gets around everyone on the list, plenty of energy, does the hard things, does the unselfish things. And I think Zach Butters has a great mix of being, one, the leader and the captain, but also being a bloke that will be alongside you in the trenches, both on and off field. And the way he sort of just spoke about the Horn at the press conference, pulled him up, and the way he is with his teammates, I feel like Zach Butters is also a really good clubman. And it kind of reminded me of Chris Newman as a skipper. Knew he had that great mix of, he wasn't quite, obviously at the level of Zach Butters, but you want those skippers that are also, there with you kind of off the field. That's my preference anyway, of what I want from my skipper.
Happy to circle back to this. Do you know what else Zach Butters is?
What?
Gone.
He's gone?
He coming back to Melbourne next year, baby.
Oh,
wow.
That's huge. A little bit of mail.
Where to?
Josh,
well, have you guys been paying attention? He is the jungle drums in this part of the world, and I mean this part of the world, are very, very loud that he is on his way back to Victoria. He is incredibly wedded to Ken Hinkley, and my information suggests he'll be on the move, my friends.
So you're suggesting you'll be the Cats next season?
Well, they're certainly in the mix, which will upset a few who get wound up about salary caps and third-party deals and whatnot. But
so is he playing? Is he playing for Geelong or Cotton On? Which one is it? Which one is
Clubbyman that, Patto?
Wow, there you go. You got to be. Any mail from Josh coming from the Bellarine Peninsula down there at Geelong, you have to stand up and pay attention there. Newsbreaker, Josh. Hopefully you haven't divulged any secret information from your text threads with Chris or Andrew Mackey. But no, I could definitely see that. But hey, you can still be traded and still be a best clubman. Is that, or you think once you request the trade back, then it cancels you out?
I'm all for the trades. They can do whatever they like.
He's given service.
It's 2025. People move around.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
You can still be a best clubman at one employer and move on to the next.
I might be wrong. He might stay there and re-sign and be the next captain of Port Adelaide, and we'll circle back to this, and you can poke fun at me. But anyway, that's my info.
They did say that once about Travis Boak, and he never came back. So, yeah, we'll wait and see. All right, boys. Well, that's been a jam-packed episode. Plenty of energy, plenty of great stuff. Still loving our footy. Oh, and yes, Flan, why are you in a Liverpool jersey?
Well, I stayed up till 5 a.m. last night, a little bit dusty, watched all the celebrations. Liverpool 20th English title, squaring up with Man United on 20 titles apiece. But, of course, Liverpool have the 6 European Cups, so they once again sit alone at the top as the greatest side in English football. And they did it in style, smashed Tottenham 5-1, and it's just great for Arne Slot, who did a great job managing the team, and Virgil van Dijk, the best centre-back in the world, best captain in the world, Mo Salah, the best forward in the world. Go the Reds.
We'll never walk alone.
You'll never walk alone.
Wow, great
Are we
effort,
done?
Flan. All right, that's been Bigger Footy. What a great episode. And if you are in Melbourne this Thursday night and wanting to come to the 200 Plus Cup, we've got a great night planned at the St Andrews Beach Brewery in Melbourne Park, right near the MCG. We're going to go down and watch Chom dominate for the mighty Kangas. Butsy will be there. We'll all be there having a drink and telling a few yarns. So Moff will have plenty of that details pumping through the 200 plus pages this week, no doubt. And we'd love to have a beer with everybody and have a chat about footy.
Yeah, get down. Huge game.
Well, kind of. The company will be great. But that's been Bigger Footy. Thanks, plumbers, and we'll see you next week.
See you, boys.
See you, boys.
Hey, boys.